Fame isn't for everybody. Exploitation, a lack of privacy, and constant public scrutiny are just some of the drawbacks of a career that takes one into the limelight. Though we have regularly covered cases of famous individuals who have disappeared from the face of the earth, never to be found, there are also instances of famous people who, for one reason or another, disappear, only to reappear days or weeks later. Join us for today's episode, as we examine 3 such cases of famous people. Duffy. Born June 23, 1984, in the city of Bangor, Wales, Amian Duffy, better known by her stage name Duffy, is a singer-songwriter best known for her massive single Mercy, from her debut album Rock Fairy, which was released in 2008. Her first international release, the hit song, shot Duffy to stardom and is now considered her signature track, noted to have been influenced by the likes of soul singers Aretha Franklin, as well as the Supremes. The song was nominated for several awards, including the Grammy Award for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and sold 500,000 copies in the UK, making it the 3rd best-selling single of 2008 in the country. It also topped the charts in the likes of Germany, Greece, Turkey, Japan, and New Zealand, as well as a host of other European countries. Meanwhile, the album, Rock Fairy, sold 9 million copies worldwide. Though she released a second album in 2010 to moderate success, Endlessly reached number 9 in the UK charts. After this point, it seems that Duffy vanished from the limelight. By 2012, she was no longer speaking with the media and had either canceled or failed to attend all of her scheduled performances. In 2013, she made a brief appearance at a tribute to Edith Piaf, and in 2015, she had a small role in Tom Hardy's Coen Brothers movie Legend. In 2017, a single social media post let fans know that she hoped to show them something new soon. But other than these small moments, Duffy was nowhere to be seen. A journalist attempted to track her down in 2018, but was told by a friend, if Duffy doesn't want to be found, she won't be found. For decades, fans wondered what had become of the soul singer. How could someone disappear during the height of their success? But in 2020, all was revealed, when Duffy finally made a return to the public eye. In a detailed statement posted to duffywords.com, a website that contains nothing more than that very statement, she revealed that she took a hiatus from making music, stepped away from the spotlight, and even removed herself from her friends and family after she was drugged, abducted, raped, and abused for 4 weeks, beginning on her birthday 10 years earlier. She writes, "It was my birthday. I was drugged at a restaurant. I was drugged then for 4 weeks and traveled to a foreign country." Though she declined to name the person responsible for the abuse, she added that the perpetrator had made veiled confessions of wanting to kill her. She explained that these death threats kept her somewhat compliant as she was too afraid to go to the police in case the culprit found her and killed her. However, she did eventually go to the police sometime after escaping capture, but mentioned that the identity of the perpetrator should be only handled by the police, and that is between me and them. She stated that she opted to go to the police because someone threatened to, quote, out her story. The singer-songwriter stated that the trauma was so nightmarish that she, at one point, considered changing her name, moving to another country, and leaving her career behind. It also massively affected the relationships around her. She isolated herself from her loved ones for a while, and though she eventually began to date again, she stated, quote, each one would love bomb me and want the person on the album cover, while I was just a person hurt. It was futile. Duffy was able to open up about her trauma largely thanks to her therapist, but stated that the decision to make her story public was not one she took lightly. Some alluded that I would pretty much be finished in whatever chances I have to make music publicly again. Some have said I would be scorned by the public. Another said I would be called selfish that the rapist is still at large. But she ultimately concluded, I thought the public disclosure of my story would utterly destroy my life emotionally, while hiding my story was destroying my life so much more. She stated that she spent months alone following the ordeal, cut her hair to prevent it from coming matted as she grieved, and moved house 5 times in the first 3 years afterwards. She added that not singing was killing me. Duffy concluded that she could now leave the last decade in the past where it belongs. Hopefully no more what happened to Duffy questions. Now You Know I Am Free. That same year, she released the song Something Beautiful. Though Duffy has been quiet again since, fans hold out hope that she is working on a comeback behind the scenes. Christie. Born in Devon, England in 1890, Agatha Christie was a British author, best known for her detective novels, including tales of her famed characters, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, both of which have received numerous TV and movie adaptations. But as well as her skills as a writer, Agatha is also famed for her bizarre disappearance in 1926. But before we explore the disappearance, we need to delve a little into her personal life. In October of 1912, aged 22, she met Archibald Archie Christie at a dance. In her late teens and early 20s, she met numerous men and had several relationships and even an engagement, but all were short-lived. But her relationship with Archie was different. The pair quickly grew fond of one another and fell in love. And 2 years later, the couple tied the knot, marrying on Christmas Eve, 1914. With the outbreak of World War I, Archie was due to be sent overseas to fight, and they wanted to make their union official before he left. While Archie left for France, Agatha remained in England, working as a voluntary nurse and later as a dispenser, which was a paid position. Her war service ended in 1918, by which time Archie had returned to Britain as a colonel in the Air Ministry. The pair relocated to London, renting a flat in the district of St. John's Wood. It was around this time that Agatha began to take writing seriously. Over the years, she had attempted to publish some of her works, but had been rejected around 6 times. But she struck gold with the creation of her famous detective, Hercule Poirot, a former Belgian policeman whom she described as having a head exactly the shape of an egg. Her first novel featuring Poirot was The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which she wrote in 1916 and eventually submitted for publishing in 1918, though the novel was rejected. A separate publishing house, the Bodley Head, offered to accept the manuscript on the condition that she changed how the solution to the mystery was revealed. After she did, Agatha signed a 5-book deal with the publishing company. The Mysterious Affair at Styles was ultimately published in 1920. In August 1919, Agatha had her first and only child, Rosalind, and at the end of the war, Archie began working in the city center of London in the financial sector. In the following few years, Agatha began to enjoy a steady stream of work. She published 2 novels in 1922 and 1923, The Secret Adversary, which featured a detective couple nicknamed Tommy and Tuppence, and Murder on the Links, which was another Poirot entry. She also wrote short stories about Poirot for a magazine named The Sketch, after being approached by its editor. Eventually, cracks in the union between Agatha and Archie began to show, and things were made all the worse by the sudden death of Agatha's mother, Clarissa Miller, in April 1926. Several months later, the media reported that Agatha had left London to recover from a breakdown which had been caused by overwork, and Archie asked her for a divorce as he'd fallen in love with someone else. Archie saw his wife on December 3rd, 1926, when the pair fought after he announced that he was going to spend the weekend with friends without Agatha. A few hours later, Agatha left their home in Berkshire, a property they'd recently purchased together, got into her car, and drove off. Her disappearance prompted one of the biggest manhunts London had ever seen, involving over 1,000 policemen and 15,000 civilian volunteers. For the first time, planes were used to cover large areas of the country in a desperate search for the missing writer, and Home Secretary William Johnson Hicks put immense pressure on the police to locate the 36-year-old. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the famous sleuth Sherlock Holmes, was even pulled in to help. Less than 24 hours after she vanished, Agatha's vehicle, a Morris Cowley, was located at Newlands Corner near Guildford. Her fur coat was still inside, as was a packed suitcase, and the headlights had been left on. However, there was no sign of the writer herself. As the days passed, rumors began to circulate, and the press speculated on what fate had befallen the 36-year-old. Some theorized that she had taken her own life in a nearby body of water named Silent Pool, where 2 children had allegedly died years earlier. But no body and no other belongings of Agatha's were found at the scene. And those who knew her believed that she wouldn't abandon life when she had such a promising career and a daughter she adored. Others suggested that it was a simple publicity stunt to raise hype for her latest novel. And then there were those who suspected that Archie had murdered his wife so that he could move in with the woman he'd been having an affair with. Even police grew suspicious of him when he revealed that his wife had left a note behind, but he had read it and destroyed it. However, he had an alibi for the time Agatha vanished, as he was spending the weekend with friends. Unbeknownst to police, he was celebrating his engagement to Nancy Neal. 11 days after she went missing, Agatha was finally located. She was found on December 14th in the Swan Hydropathic Hotel in Harrogate. But when questioned about where she'd been and what she'd been doing, Agatha struggled to answer and didn't even recognize her own photographs in the newspapers. She was checked in under the name Tressa Neal, which notably is the surname of the woman Archie was divorcing her for, and she claimed she was from South Africa. Without any answers from Agatha herself, investigators theorized that she'd crashed her car on the way to London and boarded a train to Harrogate afterwards, where she checked into a hotel with almost no luggage. She'd been recognized by one of the hotel's musicians, who later tipped off her husband. Reportedly, Agatha never discussed her disappearance. Though Archie suggested that she'd suffered memory loss due to the car accident, writer Andrew Norman speculated that she had instead suffered from a dissociative fugue, a rare condition in which someone suffers temporary memory loss and ends up in an unexpected place. It is often brought on by trauma, and it's possible the combination of Archie's request for a divorce and her mother's death was enough to trigger the condition. In 1928, Agatha resumed writing, penning some of her most famous novels in the coming years, and divorced her husband. She later married archaeologist Sir Max Malone. To this day, what really happened to Agatha between December 3rd and December 14th, be it a scheme to get back at her husband, a genuine accident, or a cry for help, remains a mystery. John Stonehouse, born July 28, 1925 in Southampton, England, John Stonehouse joined the Labour Party at the age of 16. Influenced by his political parents, Stonehouse took great interest in his local community and sought to earn a position of power from which he could enact change. His mother, Rosina, was a former scullery maid who served as the mayor of Southampton while his father was an engineer and the local secretary of his trade union. After leaving school, Stonehouse joined the RAF before attending university in 1946. He was eventually elected as the Labour Cooperative MP for Wednesbury in Staffordshire in 1957, which launched his political career. His last parliamentary contribution was on November 14, 1974, when he participated in the Prime Minister's Questions, an event held every Wednesday within the House of Commons. In the lead-up to his disappearance, allegations and questions began to surface pertaining to his loyalty to the UK and his financial affairs. In 1962, it was rumored that Stonehouse had been spying for Czechoslovakia, and he was confronted about the rumors in 1969 during a meeting with Prime Minister Harold Wilson and a defector from the Czechoslovak Secret Service. Despite the clash, Stonehouse successfully protested his innocence, and the matter seemed to be dropped. Decades later, though, in 2010, information came to light which revealed that Margaret Thatcher had agreed to cover up the revelations in 1980 during her time as Prime Minister, as there had been insufficient evidence to bring him to trial. Similarly, the allegation had been confirmed to be true 1 year earlier with the publishing of The Defense of the Realm, the authorized history of MI5, an official history book penned by historian Christopher Andrew. Though he had defended himself, Stonehouse's reputation had been tarnished by the spy allegations. The Labour Party lost the 1970 general election and he lost his seat, which led him to set up several export businesses to supplement his income. A year later, Stonehouse became involved in the dispute between Bangladesh and Pakistan, in which the former sought to gain independence from the latter. Impressed by his sympathy and support for the people of Bangladesh, the country made him a citizen of the new state following the end of the war. He was also asked to set up the British Bangladesh Trust, a bank that would provide services for Bangladeshi people in the UK. However, the way the bank was being run soon drew criticism and the attention of the fraud squad and the Department of Trade and Industry. Adding to the chaos of Stonehouse's life at the time was the fact that his political career had stalled. He was carrying out an extramarital affair with his secretary. Sheila Buckley, and he'd started participating in creative accounting with his businesses. With all of this on his plate, Stonehouse began plotting to flee the country in order to avoid the consequences of his actions. Declassified government documents revealed in 2005 that he planned to adopt the identity Joseph Markham, the deceased husband of one of his constituents. Using this ID, he opened up bank accounts in London, Melbourne, and Switzerland and began posing as an export consultant who frequently traveled. Shortly afterwards, he adopted a backup identity using the name of yet another deceased constituent named Donald Muldoon. To fund this fresh start, he moved money from his businesses to the newly opened bank accounts. He would later move the money using different identities amongst various bank accounts to try and confuse the trail, making it more difficult to follow. Stonehouse went on like nothing was wrong for nearly a week after his last appearance at the House of Commons on November 14th. On November 20th, while in Miami, Florida, he faked his death by leaving a pile of clothing on the beach, implying that he'd gone for a swim and ultimately drowned. Though his plan was somewhat flimsy, it worked. Stonehouse was presumed dead, and obituaries were subsequently published in the British press. No body was ever recovered. While his wife, Barbara, and their 3 children grieved for him back in England, Stonehouse was on his way to Australia in the company of his mistress. Barbara told the BBC in an interview shortly afterwards, "I've heard some extraordinary rumors, and they're all so much out of character with my husband's personality that they're just not worth answering or worth thinking about. I'm convinced in my mind that it was a drowning accident. All the evidence that we've had points to the fact that he was drowned." Notably, though Stonehouse had tried to confuse investigators with his multiple identities and constant bank transfers, it actually drew their attention towards him. At the time, they were searching for Lord Lucan, who had recently gone on the run after murdering his children's nanny, and they suspected that Clive Muldoon and Joseph Markham were the infamous Earl himself. Their suspicions were heightened further when a bank teller at the Bank of New Zealand learned that Stonehouse, posing as Clive Muldoon, was using the name Joseph Markham when visiting the Bank of New South Wales. The teller subsequently gave the police this information, which led to Stonehouse being put under surveillance. Stonehouse was arrested in Melbourne. On December 24th, 1974, just over a month after he had gone missing, presumed dead, he soon asked to telephone his wife back home in the UK, and the call was taped. He said in part of the conversation, "Hello, darling. Well, they picked up the false identity here. You would realize from all of this that I have been deceiving you. I'm sorry about that, but in a sense, I'm glad it's all over." A month later, he spoke with the BBC's Australia correspondent, Bob Friend, and claimed that his actions were a result of a divided personality, with the new personality providing a release to the old, which was under stress and strain of considerable proportions. When asked how he could cause his family so much pain, Stonehouse added he also refused to give up his position as MP and the accompanying salary, noting lots of members of Parliament go on overseas visits to do fact-finding tours. "I've been doing a fact-finding tour, not only in terms of geography, but in terms of the inner self of a political animal. Now, that tour could be very interesting, and my golly, I think it fully justifies an MP salary if I can get the story down on my experience." In the following months, Stonehouse tried to remain in Australia, but in July of 1975, he was deported back to the UK, escorted by detectives from Scotland Yard. He was soon put on trial for various charges concerning his failed export businesses, and in August of 1976, after 68 days, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison after being convicted on 18 counts of theft, fraud, and deception. 3 years later, he was released. He had suffered 3 heart attacks while in prison and was recovering from open heart surgery at the time. He was let out. Stonehouse's wife, Barbara, divorced him in 1978. In 1981, he married his former secretary, Sheila Buckley, and had another child. And in 1988, he died at the age of 62. To this day, his daughter denies all allegations that her father was a spy for Czechoslovakia and even wrote a book in his defense. She also suggested that his behavior was a result of his addiction to the sedative drugs Mandrax and Mogadon, which led him to feel depressed, paranoid, and confused. Historian Christopher Andrew who wrote a 2009 book about the history of MI5, noted that he'd seen Stonehouse's file and added that the Czechoslovak intelligence service had been disappointed with the quality of intelligence he passed along as minister, adding, "So to the long list of people who John Stonehouse defrauded, it is just possible that we can add the name of Czechoslovak intelligence." And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and reactions. And remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.